Lead talaga ako. Nagalino.
Good morning, everyone. Ayan. So good morning, everyone. I am Anne, by the way. I will be your host for today. And again, welcome to our sixth webinar of the Revitalizing Socio-Ecological Production Landscape and Seascapes webinar series. So I would just like to greet everyone here who is active and live sa ating group chat. And of course, feel free to greet everyone, and perhaps you could also introduce yourself or from what institution or organization or university you are from. And ayan, so good morning po, Ma'am Johanna. Good morning. Good morning, Sir Edmund. Good morning, Doc June Buot. And yes, a very warm welcome po to everyone, especially to our guests. And good morning, Miss Princess. Good morning, Gigi. And good morning po, Doc Jess. All right. So good morning po from PSAU, si Ma'am Kinky Malyari, and a BS Forestry student from Pampanga State Agricultural University. Ayan. So I hope all clear naman po yung aking voice. I hope wala naman pong problem. Kung clear naman po, magsabi lang po kayo so I could perhaps adjust for some technicalities here at Zoom. And by the way, again, we are also live on our Facebook page. So you could also check po yung ating Facebook page. And maybe you could also share it to your peers, to your colleagues, to your friends who you know that would benefit from our topic for today. So, okay. So habang pong inaantay pa po natin yung iba, just feel free to greet everyone here. And I will formally start our event in a while. Yeah, magandang umaga po, Ma'am Monique from UPOU and Ma'am Ruth from UPLB. Okay, good morning po, Sir James from Caraga State University, main campus. So, kasama po sila ni Doc Jess. Okay, so again, good morning everyone and welcome to our webinar series entitled Revitalizing Socio-Ecological Production Landscapes and Seascapes. And this is an online event organized by the Project 1 of the Emerging Interdisciplinary Research Building Climate Smart Communities or EIDRB Smart Program of the UP Open University and UP Los Baños. And again, by the way, my name is Anne and I will be your host. So this webinar aims to raise awareness on the conservation and sustainable use of socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, or SEPLS, through a series of online talks from our Satuyama and Satumi experts. And again, by the way, this webinar series is anchored to the principle of the Satuyama Satumi with associated approaches to sustainable management and biodiversity conservation. So if you are very curious what is Satoyama and Satumi, I've sent or we've sent the link of our previous webinars to give you an overview of this principle and how beneficial it is to our ecosystem. So again, feel free to greet everyone here on Zoom and also on our Facebook Live. You may send it to your friends, to your colleagues at www.facebook.com/PhilippineSatoyama/live. Or you may also share sa ating comment section for those who are watching live. Okay, so before we begin, today's topic is entitled Towards Building Sustainable Community-Based Marine Conservation, the case of Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park, Batangas. So this will be followed by a discussion and an open forum. So please note that the webinar is recorded and the video will be made available in our website and YouTube channel. Also, I would like to remind everyone or some of our webinar guidelines. So number one, kindly mute your microphones, especially when the resource speaker and the discussants talk. So if you have questions and clarifications while the talk is ongoing, please send your questions using Zoom chat or Facebook Live comment, and we will take note of your questions and acknowledge them during the open forum. And we will also send the link to the evaluation form after the open forum, and the certificates will be sent to the email indicated in the form. Okay, so that is all for our gentle reminders. Sige po, babasahin ko lang po ulit ang ating mga greetings. So good morning po, Sir Michael. Good morning, Sir Charles. Good morning, Ma'am Angeline. Good morning, Sir Ray from the province of Sultan Kudarat. Hello, good morning po. And good morning po sa Forester from Open Bay Timber Limited. Wow, from Papua New Guinea. Good morning po, Ma'am May Villaflor. Okay, so sige po. So to start, again, on behalf of the Program 1 and the EIDRB Smart Program and Philippine Satuyama team, I would like to thank you all for your interest in joining our webinar series. And again, the Japanese term Satoyama Satumi is anchored from the principle of living in harmony with nature. And this concept is one of a strategic approach to biodiversity and ecosystem landscape and seascape conservation. So we hope that we will all have a stimulating event and a very productive webinar this morning. So feel free to ask questions. Don't hesitate to clarify some things if you have any clarifications in mind during the resource person's talk, and even during po sa discussion po natin later on. Okay, so let me introduce to you our speaker. I know that you are all excited. So our speaker for today obtained his Bachelor of Science in Education major in Mathematics at the Batangas State University in Cebu. He also obtained his postbaccalaureate courses in BS Education major in Biological Science at the Dr. Francisco L. Kalingasan Memorial Colleges Foundation Incorporated, and took certificate in Environmental Chemistry and Marine Science Center for Marine Science and Mangrove Research, Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park. He obtained his Master's of Arts in Education in the field of Natural Science and Master of Science in Fisheries in the field of Aquatic Ecology and Marine Botany at the Pangasinan State University, Binmalay Campus. He took his Doctor of Philosophy in Biology, specializing in ecology and conservation at the De La Salle University, Dasmariñas, Cavite. His specializations are environmental biology, particularly on mangroves and mollusks, fisheries, science, and mathematics education. His research interests vast from ecosystem modeling, mathematical biology, biostatistics, and curriculum and instruction. Currently, he is an assistant professor at the UP Rural High School, College of Arts and Sciences, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and he is also the Marine Science Advisor and Conservation Biologist at the Center for Marine Science and Mangrove Research, Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park, Batangas. So ladies and gentlemen, let us all give a very warm virtual clap to Dr. Mario A. Cudiamat.
Okay, thank
Good
you, Miss
morning,
Anne.
sir.
Okay, thank you, Miss Anne. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Yan. Okay, let me just share my screen. Is it in full screen mode na, Miss Anne? Okay.
Yes po, Doc Mau. Full screen na po.
Okay, so once again, a pleasant and blessed morning to everyone. Thank you again, Doc June, Ma'am Anne, the Philippines sa Toyama, the UP Open University, the University of the Philippines Los Baños for giving me this opportunity to share my humble knowledge and experiences in the field of mangrove conservation. So my lecture is titled Towards Building Sustainable Community-Based Marine Conservation, the case of Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park in Batangas. This research project is actually a portion of my PhD dissertation in the LSU on mangrove conservation, which is titled Building Resilience in Integrated Community-Based Conservation of Key Mangrove Forests Towards Sustainable Development, which is acronym in the BRICS, no, in Calatagan, Batangas. And this work is actually a product of my more than 12 years of engagement and involvement in a community-based mangrove conservation, being also a resident of the community in Calatagan. So let me just present the objectives of my topic. So one, to present the threats and status of the mangrove forests in the Philippines, and to explain the integration of sustainable development framework in community-based mangrove conservation, and lastly, I'll be sharing with you some practices and conservation efforts being done in Calatagan Mangrove towards resiliency and sustainability. Okay, so let me just give you a brief review of the biology and ecology of mangroves. No? So mga FYIs lang po ito. So mangroves are actually, they are halophytes, no? Salt-tolerant plants because of their ability to tolerate varying salinities. And they can grow in saline or brackish water environment. And sometimes they are referred to as the rainforest of the sea. So in the picture, this is one of the climate smart species, no, yung Avicennia marina. And in addition, mangroves provide ecosystem services, no, such as provisioning, we have regulating, supporting, and cultural and aesthetic ecosystem services. And some of the ecological values of mangroves are fisheries, of course, we have ecotourism, livelihood, and food, basically for the community inhabitants. So other ecological functions of mangroves include habitat for juvenile fishes, for climate change mitigation and adaptation, we have carbon sequestration, most especially the soil carbon, which is higher compared to the vegetative carbon in the biomass, the above ground and below ground biomass of the mangroves. So we also have health if we have healthy mangroves, we also expect healthy catchments. So mangroves also serve as shoreline stabilizers and coastal kidneys because of their ability to buffer or filter nutrients, pollutants, and sediments, no, from the terrestrial runoff. So just to share with you the major types of mangrove communities, this is in terms of or based on ecohydrogeomorphology, we have fringing. No? So kapag mga fringing mangroves, ito yung naka-attach sa upland or sa terrestrial area. Very common yung mga fringing mangroves. And we also have the basin, basin mangroves. Ito naman, these are partially impounded depression. So meron siyang parang depression which are prone for flooded during dry season and regularly during wet season by the tidal by the tides, no. And we also have the riverine. So familiar din tayo sa riverine. So mangroves grow along flowing waters, sa mga rivers, and sa mga creeks. So the fourth one is an overwash type of mangrove. Ito naman, island type of mangrove siya. So this is surrounded by water. And yung last natin is the dwarf mangrove forest. So itong dwarf mangrove forest is also a type of fringe mangrove forest. But the only difference is that these mangroves are appearing in colder climate and in the sediment with little amount of nutrients. That's why dwarf or stunted yung growth nila. Usually, we have the Candelia and the Avicennia species. Okay. Now, for the mangrove zonation, so we can see the different zones of the mangrove, no, for each type. So this actually depends on land elevation, on water, tidal inundation, of course, soil salinity, and tidal changes. So we have these mangroves in the near the terrestrial forest. Meron din tayo sa landward zone. Okay. Sa mid-zone, we also have this species, no? And yung seaward zone, ito yung kinukonsider natin ng mga coastal frontliners. We have the Avicennia and Soneracia alba, no? Kaya sila ay climate smart species. They are considered to be climate smart species at nire-recommend for mangrove reforestation because of their peg roots pneumatophores, which actually stabilize sediments, no? Especially during storms and heavy rains. And here is the taxonomy of the mangrove species in the Philippines based on Dr. Jurgen Primavera. So we have a total of 36 species of mangroves, which can be trees, shrubs, palm, yung nipa, and then we have ferns also. And just a trivia, no, there are controversies as to whether family Avicenniaceae, so we have I think 4 species here in the Philippines, which is recently considered to be nested within the family Acanthaceae. You see the family Acanthaceae. And another one, itong Soneraceae, according to she and others in 2002, based on their phylogenetic analysis and DNA analysis research. So yung 5 species are nested within family Letraceae, itong Soneraceae. Okay. And however, no, we also have mangrove species in the red list. So ito yung nasa red list natin. We have endangered species. We have Camptosimon philippinensis. We have the Lumnitsera racemosa, Avicennia rumpiana, vulnerable. And then we have the nearly threatened species, Adiceras floridum, Sirius formerly Sirius decandra. And we have this Soneracia ovata. Okay. So as to the mangrove statistics and status, so ang daming mga significance at ecosystem services. But despite this contribution, they are threatened and they are rapidly disappearing natural environment. So this mangrove forest statistics is based on the FMB or yung Forest Management Bureau. The last was in 2015. So meron tayong 3,000 hectares, no. And then based on the forecast of the Global Forest Assessment, no, in 2020, so we have 296,000 hectares, no, more than 296 hectares. And of course, the decline in mangrove cover is attributed to the different climate change related stressors and anthropogenic pressures. So I tried to present the different threats using an acrostics with an acronym mangroves, just to summarize these threats. So we have M for marine pollution, we have A for aquaculture expansion, no, natural disasters. We also have global increase in temperature, resource use conflicts, no, overpopulation and overexploitation. And this one, a very critical consideration in most of the mangrove reforestation and rehabilitation, ano, yung very poor ecological knowledge on mangroves. So we really need to consider ecology in whatever reforestation programs that we are about to do, no, in a particular area. So we have E for eutrophications and yung SLR, sea level rise, no. Okay. So how are we going to address these gaps, no? With this concern on mangrove loss, no, it's very important that we have these immediate actions, and one of the promising approaches, no, is the use of community-based mangrove conservation. This is to give emphasis on the role of local communities. Okay, and just to present to you how SD lens or framework may be incorporated in mangrove conservation. So we have this concept of sustainable development, which is a systems approach to mangrove conservation. So using this lens in mangrove conservation, we actually look at the different pillars of the dimensions of sustainable development. So we have the social, we have to consider the economic, no, and the ecological or environmental consideration. This is to better understand the human-environmental interaction. Sabi nga nung motto ng Philippine Satoyama, so living in harmony with nature. And another is that using this approach, we look at how different dimensions interact and affect one another. This is to manage sustainability in mangrove. So ito yung one kamatayang sustainable development goals that we are really trying to mainstream in all development programs or projects that we have. And some concept on CBC, community-based conservation. So naka-umbrella siya sa biocultural approach, historically speaking, no, and it's a biodiversity conservation strategy that sabi nga natin systems approach, kasi tinitingnan niya yung iba't ibang pillars or dimensions para maging, say, science-based yung mga programs or research-based. This is of course towards sustainability. Ayan. So I'll just share with you an example of how SD framework is applied in my research. I actually employed the SD lens. So this framework tries to link the different dimensions of sustainable development. So as you can see, we have ecological, and there are parameters measured to describe if the organization or if the conservation is leading towards sustainability. No? So we have for sociocultural dimension, economic dimension, and political dimension. Okay. And next. Ayan. So at this point, I'll be sharing some conservation practices being done in Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park in the past 12 years, no, using the CBC approach, no. So yung Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park, or locally known as Angkulo, it's a community-based coastal resource management program in one of the corridors of the Verde Island Passage sa Calatagan. Napakaliit na community lang po nito. So ito yan, it has this fringing and overwash mangrove area. Maliit lang actually yung area, less than 20 hectares. Pero yung ecotourism dominated, ito yon, yung overwash mangrove forest. No? So there are 12 species, no, belonging to 5 families. Asuneracia alba being the most dominant species, no? And yung Avicennia yung most abundant with the highest relative density. Okay, and the park is actually managed by people's organization named, before it was Talimusak and they changed it to Palitakan. So yung Palitakan ay local name ng mudskipper, no? So yung mudskipper kasi nagro-roam lang, parang umiikot-ikot lang siya sa mga nomatophores ng Avicennia marina. So yung Palitakan may meaning. So Palitakan stand for Pro-Mangrove Alliance and Implementing Team, and arm as Kilitisans Advocates of Nature, which is composed of fisher folks. So merong youth, may women, at saka yung mga men as local guides. We also have barangay officials, bantay bakawan, no, mga deputized na bantay dagat, no, the Menro, senior citizen, and other NGOs and academe, of course, kasi yun yung partner namin if they would like to do research. We always request the findings to be shared sa community para magamit for, say, science-based planning o sa policy formulation. So with regard to the origin, paano ba nagsimula? So it actually started with barangay resolution ng Sangguniang Kabataan, no. So and then it was elevated to the Sangguniang Bayan para magkaroon ng municipal ordinance or executive order to declare the area as a local marine protected area. And then doon nag-start yung community organizing, no, yung community resource mapping, socio-ecological profiling, because these are good basis for the formulation of mangrove ecotourism activities. Siyempre kailangan ng income para sa sustainability ng lugar. And then some of the accomplishments of the MPA. So it's awarded sa Bravo Awards, being the most outstanding mangrove protected area in the Verde Island Passage way back 2015 and in 2018. Okay. So this is just an example of mangrove ecotourism. So merong mga elevated boardwalk. Medyo mahirap lang po ang maintenance talaga ng pagkawayan, no. Although yung ibang recently kahoy na yung ginamit. So some of the conservation practices o yung presence ng mangrove ecotourism activities, we are really trying to innovate the ecotourism activities para mas madagdagan yung income ng community. And this one, yung provision of alternative livelihood, no, for the community. Most especially nitong pandemic, talagang freeze ang tourism, talagang for almost for more than 2 years, wala talagang income. Tapos may bagyo pa na sumira ng mga facilities, mga boardwalk. And it's really challenge talaga. And then capacity building. So sa capacity building, yung mga results ng mga studies, whether it's a social component of conservation, environmental research, we always request so that we can use that for capacity building ng community. Nagbibigay din naman ng LGU, no, and other organization ng mga capacity building sa community. And we also have partnership in terms of mga CSR ng mga private organization. Kung yun man ay mga trainings or say planting. So merong mga MOA and MOU. However, yung talagang challenge pag community-based is financial sustainability. Yun talaga yung challenge ko kapag balak nating mag-establish ng community-based organization. Okay. Now just to share with you some tools in mainstreaming sustainable development to community-based conservation. So ito yung ginagamit kasi usually ng mga awards, no, pagka at sa planning, no, sa assessment ng Menro. So we have the MPA Management Effectiveness Assessment Tool. So the tool is actually used to assess the effectiveness of the management and governance ng organization. So basically, socio-political yung nature niya, no? Although mayroong mga ecological component, and yung MPA meet, meron siyang 9 management focus. So we have the management plan, management body. There has to have organization talaga na to look for or to manage, no. And then we have the legal instrument. Kailangan may legal identity, community participation. That's very important. Okay. Financing. Okay. IEC, of course, para ma-promote yung lugar, no. Enforcement, monitoring and evaluation, and of course yung site development. So these are the 9 management focus categories. So ito yung result ng 10-year conservation. So it has a total score of 71. Actually dapat siya i-level 4 na. Pero merong isang threshold na hindi na-meet kasi yung sa enforcement. Itong sa enforcement kasi talagang kailangan ng budget pag may magmo-monitor o yung may mga indicators ito sa MPA meet tool. So sustained lang siya. Supposedly level 4 institutionalized. Pero kailangan ma-meet yung mga iba't ibang threshold, no, para siya ay maging institutionalized. And then this one is a very good tool, no, yung yung socio-ecological production landscape and seascape. Ito namang tool na ito is medyo economic ang nature niya, no. So meron itong iba't ibang indicators. So one is seascape diversity and ecosystem protection. We have biodiversity, knowledge and innovation, governance and social equity, livelihood and well-being. Pwede rin siyang gamitin. Okay. And I would like to share this very critical consideration in mangrove reforestation. So just a little bit of algebra, no? WS plus WS is equal to WS, 2WS. So yun yung ibig sabihin, wrong substrate plus wrong species, no, weak survival and weak species growth. So the bottom line, no, so it just shows the ecological dimensions of mangrove rehabilitation. And that we need to use the principle of planting by ecology, no, not planting by convenience. Yan yung laging mine-mention ni Dr. Jurgen Primavera. Kasi syempre, ang Rhizophora, that's very charismatic species. Pag talaga budget constraint, no, kulang sa budget, you will resort to the use of this charismatic species kasi nga talagang ito yung available yung propagules, no, almost full year round, no. So it's really important that we consider, no? So kailangan i-consider yung type ng substrate o yung soil o sediment sa pagpili ng species ng mangrove. Now, if you would like to browse these manuals, pwede nyo namang ma-download po ito if you're planning to do community-based rehabilitation or mangrove reversion of abandoned and illegal brackish water fish pond. Or if you want, pwede nyo akong i-email, bibigyan ko po kayo ng kopya nito. These are very good manuals, no, na makakatulong sa inyong advocacy or sa inyong mga conservation initiatives. Okay? And to sum up, no, these are some elements for mangrove conservation to be sustainable. So one is, of course, community-based, may PO or people's organization. It must be participatory at yung biggest driver is really motivation. How will you inspire people to involve, or how will you harness cohesion or participation of the community? They need to have role model actually para makita nila na we really need to conserve our resources, no, for future generation. And then we have this multi-sectoral approach, no? It has to involve different sectors of the society. funding support and mechanism. As I mentioned, this is one of the most challenging. And then empowered stakeholders and provision of livelihood. We need to diversify the livelihood of the people kasi kung yung income ay sa tourism lang naka-base, halimbawa mangrove ecotourism based yung plan ninyo na conservation, you really need to think of a business plan na kung saan naka-layout yung iba't ibang mga pwedeng i-offer ng mga livelihood for the community para if ever na halimbawang walang bisita, walang guest, merong other resort or options for income yung community. And then some issues, challenges, and recommendations. No, so it's important always to integrate science-based knowledge on different conservation-related initiatives of the PO. So, syempre, this can be done through research, no, continuous capacity building, and empowerment of the stakeholders. And we can strengthen that if we use resilient-based approaches. How are we going to do that? By promoting sustainable ecotourism, no, yung diversification of the livelihood. And if possible, we can do integration of mangrove-friendly aquaculture. This is to ensure food security and yun yung livelihood diversification. On the social aspect, no, we can also promote gender mainstreaming in CRM. At itong isa pa, yung blue carbon approach, which is nowadays becoming very popular, no, especially in carbon offset, if possible, no, carbon trading. And yes, no, yung future direction natin is we look forward to integrate or harmonize these tools, no, kasi if you look at the thematic areas, so ito more of economic, the FMB's criteria and indicators for SFM, so very socio-ecological, although meron dito mga economic din sa criterion 7 ng FMB, and itong MPA meet, the nature is socio-political, and of course integrating these tools will have potential to build sustainability. So ito yung isa sa mga nilulook forward ng organization. And some of my references. So I would like to end my presentation with a call to protect our mangroves that protect us. Maraming salamat po for listening and hoping na may natutunan po kayo.
Right. Thank you so much po, Doc Mau. May I request everyone po to mute po muna para po hindi sila Okay, sige po. Thank you very much, Doc Mau, for your talk about the sustainable practices that has been used in conserving mangroves in Calatagan, and for sharing to us the accomplishments po ng community-based conservation initiatives, for emphasizing the need to plant for ecologically sound and beneficial rather than yung convenience, for reiterating po yung advocacy din po ni Dr. Jurgen, and for presenting the future direction ng ating mangroves and their potential for sustainability. So if you have any questions for our speaker, please leave them on our Zoom chat box. And for our viewers on Facebook Live, kindly send your questions via comment section, and we will take note of your questions later after the discussion. So also the link of the evaluation form shall be shared in the comment section later on. So, ayan po. So let's now proceed to our discussion. Let me introduce to you our discussant. So our discussant is a professor at the Caraga State University. He obtained his Bachelor of Science in Biology at Mindanao State University and took his Master's in Biology at the Central Mindanao University. And he finished his Doctor of Philosophy in Botany at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. He has a wide array of research interests, including computational ecology, environmental science, and aquatic biodiversity. He is currently the research and development lead implementer of the Caraga State University and program leader proponent of the Caraga State University NICER, or Niche for Center for Region. And ladies and gentlemen, let us all give a warm virtual clap to Dr. Jess Jumawan. Dr. Jess, good morning po and welcome.
Thank you very much, Anne, for a
the introduction. Thank you very much, Dr. Cudiamat, for your insightful research and sharing to all our participants who are interested in learning more, mga CBCs, community-based conservations, which is very much interesting in itself in this time na meron po tayo ang daming mga conservation efforts. So let me share to you my shared PowerPoint, and I'd like to steer the a little bit before we go to the discussion proper, and I'd like to complement the medyo naputol po ako saglit. All right, so I'd like to complement what our speaker had mentioned. I'd like to go through the overview of this mangrove sustainable community-based mangrove conservation, and let's see how our how the Philippine context about status, problems, and issues. So our speaker had discussed all about the community-based, so nandun po sa field. And I like our colleagues and participants to look a little bit in the macro scale. So kung merong, if you are riding an airplane, you go up higher. So kung nandun ka sa field, nasa Calatagan po kayo ngayon, if you go higher above 40,000 meters, 4 kilometers. So you are in the perspective of the entire higher perspective. No? So let me share to you this component before we go our discussion, and let's loosen our minds and open our understanding on how we view about community mangrove conservation in general, and how important are sustainable community-based conservation actions. All right. Okay, so medyo mahina po yung click ng slides. So please bear with me doon po sa ano. So our speaker had shared to you yung ating status of mangroves in the Philippines. So in the world, meron po tayong data sa mga global mangrove watch and other websites, and I tried to extract sa Philippine context, no? So ganito po yung hitsura ng mangrove cover or extent ng mangroves sa Philippines, courtesy of the team of Dr. Bunting et al. In 2022. Pero hindi po ito published, they just presented their data. The problem is I was not able to extract the actual figures. I'm not sure about the of the data that could be extracted, or nasa parang yata, naka-protected proof yata yung data that we need to write letters to extract it. So, but then it can be accessed, no? Which is shown here sa website, how you can access. So the good thing here is meron po silang database, and meron na rin mga GIS shape files that can be utilized. And a long time ago, in 2011, meron ng research, and I believe this also shows a picture. So published article po ito. The problem na in the Philippines, because we have data, but it needs to be verified, or it needs to be published for us to consider it as an published article. So here it shows na increasing na po yung trend from the downward trends, and si Dr. Mo has presented an update in 2022. And these are the 10 provinces that has highest mangrove cover in the country. Palawan is the number 1, followed by Sulu, Quezon, and we have Bohol and Basilan as the 9th and the 10th. The problem is while it is expanding now, but the bad situation is yung sa IJS, courtesy of Dr. Brian Johnson, and I was able to work for a time with IGS, Dr. Brian, and he has these projected urban land use maps in the Philippines, which has a projection. So he was sharing to me a long time ago na he's making land use maps, in the Philippines, and now he can be accessed. So there are projections, and so it's not a good thing for mangroves, because eventually there will be trade-offs, as we expand with our land use. So there are natural vegetations that will also be affected. Right. So here in the global mangrove extent, it shows here na meron po tayong gains and loss, no? So mangroves with our community base and our conservation actions, meron po tayong mga gains, meron po tayong mga protections or enacted laws that protects, mangroves, and it results to gains, no? And we also have losses, along with that are anthropogenic activities. So Doc Mau, Cudiamat very well explained to us what are the anthropogenic activities that are detrimental for mangroves, no? So here, if you are going to focus more, you could see the green and then the red colors, which shows areas that are gaining and areas that are losing, no? So we could be able, this one is in Marinduque. I highlighted Marinduque because it's small island in the Philippines, and we could zoom in and focus and see in the northeastern landscape, andun po yung concentration of mangroves, and almost many of the sa southern Luzon, Mindoro, and this one is Marinduque and other parts, nakakoncentrate po lahat ng mangroves. Yung thick cover po andun po sa northeastern part or seaboard. So here we could see the losses and gains, and this could be very helpful for local government agencies and mga conservation mangrove conservation advocates to look and investigate, or at least prioritize, no, saan areas that we could do more conservation actions. Segue lang muna, medyo mahirap talaga sa Philippines maghanap ng mga data. Here nakapost po ito sa online, so sa FOI na rin si Mr. Alvin wrote a letter doon sa FOI na, tapos mga land use covers and in relation to maps, and I could share his sentiments. So he shared to the FOI, and then he wrote a letter, and then the FOI advised him to write a letter in Namria. So pinag-usapan namin ni Dr. Buot kanina na we have one government, but it appears that we have so many agencies. So ganun po yung frustration sometimes when you do research. Now, yung sa mangroves natin, we are looking for published articles, and this could be true until now, although it's 2000 to 2012. So our mangroves in the Philippines are showing deforestation and habitat losses, no, even if there are reported na mga gains. So may offsets, no. And in 2019, one article published that most of the losses are attributed to agricultural conversion, aquaculture conversion, infra activities, no, and other human activities, and unidentified, no, several hectares of mangroves. And we also have mga tectonic activities, no, that could induce subsidence ng tectonic plates, and then put the mangroves higher or lower, and that would change the mangrove landscape. So this is the proportion of the figure, and others na medyo malaki yung unidentified and mga human activities. That's because we are expanding of our land uses. So we need to, enforce our laws to protect the mangroves more in the event of conservation actions. No? So this is the picture. Now, maraming mga research na po in the past, pero I'd like to focus lang on this major rehabilitation comments. No? So Junio Mendez and Toribio in 2010 already have indicated the mangrove cover, and it shows na meron po tayong slight recovery from the continuous spiraling down of the mangrove decline. But ito pong activities ngayon sa mga replanting, as what Doc Cudiamat had mentioned, it is also criticized. No, we have monospecific culture or our colleagues call it rhizoporazation, only planting of one rhizopora species, no, which would result to high mortality, which was explained by different researchers. And planted seedlings are criticized also to be planted, no, in unsuitable lower intertidals, no. So it was criticized that or questioned about the habitat replacement also. So mangroves thrive in mangrove environment, but they planted it in seagrass, which is habitat replacement ang result. And si Dr. Cudiamat kanina, he mentioned about SSS, no, yung substrate species substrate success principle. So that's the reason, one of the reasons, and it was suggested na in early as 2000 pa and 2008. So what about community-based mangrove conservation in the Philippines? Now we have two major programs sa Philippines in the past decade. No, one is the National Greening Program. This is a multi-billion project. Hopefully it could targeted to plant 38,000 hectares plus mangroves from 2011 to 2016. And the BFAR component and the DA, we have the Philippine National Aquasilviculture Programs, which is incentive based of planting. No, si Doc Mau is very familiar about these programs because it is also community based action. No, so but then meron na pong comment in 2008 pa lang, several authors have already noted of replanted seedlings is costly in the long run, no, as they required about $400 to over $500 per hectare. No, so imagine you transpose this or compute this in 10 years after, or about 5 to 6 years after, no, sa during the implementation of our major programs. So may mga comments na po yung ating mga researchers and experts about the economics when we bank onto this kind of programs. All right. So what happened? The National Greening Program and PNAP had taken off, which is our community-based approaches, no, supposedly in the national level. So ganito pa yung nangyari in the story. So source po ito is the COA 2011 to 2019. So total expenditures or allocation rather is 47 billion plus. And ito po yung mode of distribution ng funds during the period. So ganun kalaki po yung money that we spent in this mangrove and other. So to clarify, yung National Greening Program, subset lang po yung mangroves. Pero we don't have a data that is intended for mangroves na data, kaya minention natin National Greening Program. So I like to be clarified na yung National Greening Program subset lang po yung mangroves. It's a percent component ng whole program. But yung sa BFAR na component, which is PNAP, when it was launched, it released 237.5 million mangroves. This is official gazette ng Philippine government. Kasama na po doon yung aquasilviculture, hatchery production within the mangrove system. All right, so it was reported sa 2013 that mangrove is 85% accomplished. Ito po yung covering 10,000 or less hectares, and 32,000 fisher folk participants were included. Ito po yung highlight sa mangrove planting, which is a report from day before. So yung sa objectives ng before, I've said na subset lang din po yung mangrove sa PNAP. So mayroong problems sa interagency facilitation. So it was highlighted in the COA report. So aside from that, it was also reported that is a failure to establish marketing network. Deficiencies were noted, improper practices. This is COA po yung report. All right. So ganito po yung nangyari, no, way back implementation of these major activities. All right. So because wala tayong data sa mangroves, let's look at how NGP, because it is reflective to all, no. So ganito po yung problems ng NGP, subset na po dito yung mangroves. So may mga reports which was audited, ganito po yung picture, no, 60 hectares, 50. So you could see the survival rate, no. So much smaller yung area, much higher yung percentage. But this one is not true. Pero kung mas smaller area, you can manage it better. So that's the reason why yung mga studies ni Doc Mao is very important. Going back to the community or community-based approaches, management of the small involving community and local government could be one of the could have shown success stories, but success stories, pero survival rate is very low, in general, if you are going to look at it. So one of the findings ito mismo is interview with the DNR data. It shows no analysis sa soil during the entire implementation of NGP. So looking at this major comment, some steps associated with soil testing was not implemented. Mga nutrient status, physical conditions, fertility, soil sample collection, analysis, interpretation of results, and fertilizer requirement management recommendations. Kaya ganun po yung picture. So this was the post-audit na po ito ng COA and the DNR consequently, right? So si COA and DNR, COA analysis of DNR data, nag-provide po sila ng whole picture from 2011 to 2019. So you imagine sa 2011, no SMP. Yung SMP po is no survey, mapping and planning. So no survey, mapping and planning. I'll have to check it again. Ito pa yun, survey, mapping and planning, yung SMP. Alright, so this is the picture sa 2011 and 2012. There's an adjustment. Meron na pong survey and mapping minus planning. So imagine 2012 to 2014 po yan. So no planning. So that speaks for itself. And then we have SMP, may planning na po, but still with errors. So maybe pagdating po sa dulo, Penro na lang po yung nag-implement. So that's the picture po ng COA audit report. So this is the whole duration of the NGP implementation and no soil analysis was performed. So that's the overall picture. All right, so soil is an important, and this is a substrate, and si Doc Mao, he stressed na yung species and substrate is equal to success, yung SSS that he mentioned a while ago. So here we understand. So it's part of our study. We did in Oriental Mindoro, northeastern landscape. We investigated major mangrove area in Oriental Mindoro, and we understand na kung hindi mo talaga inaral yung substrate sa Oriental Mindoro na site, and even in the Philippines, we identified 8 major soil types, and each soil type has a different soil conditions, and it has different requirements. Kaya ayun, medyo mababa yung survival rates if rhizopora lang po yung itatanim. So ganun po yung nangyari. And if you're going to understand the 1 meter soil profile, ganito po yung structure ng soil profile ng mangroves. We have a porous layer and we have a dense layer. So about siguro nasa mga 10% of 1 meter is a porous layer, and pababa po niyan is a dense layer. So yung porous layer is composed solely of silt, because medyo magaan yung silt and they can move with the tides, and with the gravity it will compact down to dense layer, so forming the sand, heavier at the bottom, followed by clay and silt. So ganun po yung understanding. Now yung porous layer is very important, because if you see the porous layer, medyo malambot po siya. So when the seedling establishes, so we need to understand na ganito po yung requirement ng mangrove. So when it's already settled, it cannot attach too much the denser particle of the soil, or denser part of the soil. So we need to understand that component as well. All right, so looking at the relationships, we tried yung mga significant components, kung ano ba yung soil components, and we tried to model it. So yung organic matter, as we found out, is related negatively with clay, but has a relationship with potassium and nitrogen. So it just shows na meron po tayong relationships ng soil, and it needs to be understood for the establishment of mangrove seedlings when we do rehabilitation actions. And we also considered yung abundance and soil data. we understand now that the abundance has a negative relationship with pH. Big sabihin, when the soil pH is negative, it promotes abundant mangrove growth. No? So something like that is very insightful. No? When it comes to dominance of mangroves as well, you need to consider elevation and organic matter. No? So we could see that at some elevation, it promotes dominance of certain mangrove species along with organic matter contents. No? So at low, this is usually in the lower elevation. So lower elevation, you go there, meron po tayong ma-observe na Soneratia or Abyssinia marina, which is completely dominating this landscape. No? So ganun po yung insight ng results when we understand the dominance of biodiversity indices. What about species richness? How do we, what would be the relationships? And we found out that yung species richness pala has something to do with potassium and phosphorus. So the presence or absence of potassium and phosphorus is the reason why may mga areas na high in diversity and may mga areas na low in diversity or species richness na promotes diversity. So we tried to make a model looking at the elevation gradients. So these are what we call seaward, middleward, and landward conditions. This goes for Shannon and species richness diversity. And they come up with similar models, different equations lang po because we are looking for diversity and species richness. But it showed similar lang naman po yung intention ng richness and diversity. So high richness and diversity between seaward and middle were observed, no? And under these elevation gradients and lower Shannon and species richness also. So bimodal po yung distribution ng species richness and diversity along the elevation gradient. And we need to understand that as well when i-implement natin yung mga CBCs, community-based mangroves. So once the model was generated, we reconstructed the different species along the elevational gradients along with the diversity. So nandun po sa lower elevation, may medium diversity po tayo that will be observed. And high diversity is on these elevation gradients and low diversity papuntang landward. No? So these are all the species of mangroves expected. No? This is true for the northeastern landscape and might as well be true to many areas in the Philippines because it shares a common mangrove profile. So we could talk about this siguro in the next in detail. No? So I'd like to have this in the paselang po muna. All right, so suitable areas must be identified to effectively reduce cost in the implementation of mangrove and rehabilitation activities. So that's what has been the report has shown. So that's why it's important that we need to understand where are those suitable sites. No? And then we could recommend to the LGUs that these are the sites that we need to prioritize. These are more suitable areas. Hindi yung parang suntok sa buwan lang yung implementation. We implement the project kasi may pera pero hindi pala siya suitable for mangrove growth. So we did this in Oriental Mindoro. With the pandemic came, we were not able to have a policy. And I hope to go back sa Oriental Mindoro to share these results. And we did it also in Alabel in Sarangani province. Good thing for this is you can utilize any secondary or primary data. This one we utilize mga secondary data from the LGU national government. And this one we complemented it with actual data, field data on the biodiversity and some characteristic of the soil. And we combine it using other, that could be a platform, convert it into analytical format sa GIS. And we could extract suitable and not suitable sites, and then recommend to the LGU that these are the areas when you would want to have a mangrove rehabilitation actions. So I'd like to take a few comments dun sa what our experts had said about mangrove management, conservation, and rehabilitation. And if you're going to look at it, tama po yung sinabi ni Doc Mau na it revolves around economy, society, and environment. So it should be a collaboration, or sa community. It's much more important because nasa actual, the research of Dr. Mau is very important because proven and tested na po natin na yung success story is in the ground. So when we include the people, the economy, we include the society or the economy, the society, and the environment, then we could see paint a bigger picture of what needs to be done, no? So yung national approach natin, and it's a hard lesson learned na it was criticized by the COA na marami pong mga hindi not a good success story. So it was presented by Doc Mao kanina, yung CBC concept, and I will not it was very well explained by Doc Mao. And that's all, no? Thank you very much for your time and for listening. Magandang umaga po sa lahat.
Okay, thank you so much po, Doc Jess, for that very sobrang dami, sobrang meaty nung na-share po sa atin ni Doc Jess. Ang dami po nating nakuha doon. So, for giving us yung brief status ng mangroves here in the Philippines, presenting pa lang po ng losses and gains po natin through the years. And yes, indeed, it will help us parang ma-identify po natin ano ba yung mga areas na kailangan pa natin mag-invest on mangrove rehabilitation. And also yung importance ng soil analysis in the formula that was presented to us earlier by Doc Mao. And it really boils down to dun sa importance of mangrove research and mangrove studies and yung success factor of site suitability. Importance of identifying ano ba yung mga areas na suitable na i-plant yung certain mangrove species. So for the success ng mangrove management and rehabilitation. So okay, thank you again, Doc Mao and Doc Jess for those talks. And we will now proceed to answer some of the questions from our audience. So if you have any questions, clarifications, you would want to ask them verbally, you could raise your hand and unmute yourself. You'll be acknowledged to unmute yourself. But first, mag-read lang po tayo dito ng mga comments po from our participants. So from Ma'am Roxanne, so it will be very appreciated daw po if the manual that was shared earlier by Dr. Mao will be shared din as well here sa group po natin ngayon. I think yung mga manuals po na ang dami din po na, I think na-present ni Doc Mao kanina. No? So some of it, I believe yung mga toolkit, it is also searchable. But we'll also try to search and send the link perhaps later on po after po ng ating webinar. Okay, so, or baka po meron na pong link si Doc Mao. So, para po mabilis po natin ma-send po natin sa kanila na po. Okay, so kay Doc June naman po, sabi po niya, thanks for the passion, Doc Mao, and indeed we need passionate conservationists. And to add, passionate researchers din po. Ano po. Okay, so ayan, we have one question here from our participant, Trevin. Thank you for this informative presentation. We'd just like to ask, how was it ever possible na wala man po soil analysis during the NGP implementation? Doc Jess, I think this question is for you po.
Yun din po yung question. Yun din po yung aking malaking question dun sa it's a mega multi-billion project, and then pagdating nung hindi na tumubo ng mahusay yung ating itinanim na mga bini ng kahoy, mga seedlings po, napaisip, hindi pala. Pero may mga comments naman po yung mga experts natin, mga researchers, well-respected researchers in the Philippines, if ever that we are going to bank into. So pinagtataka ko lang why it was not considered. So that's the reason why mga baliw tayo sa research. That's the reason why we appreciate yung mga saka natin we have invested everything, we have wasted money, and then we begin to ask questions na sana yung mga baliw na mga researchers in the country. So yun po yung we share similar question. Bakit?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sir Jess. So, I think dun yun dun papasok po yung importance ng research natin. Bakit nga ba nangyari yung mga ganong implementation ng project without the aspect on soils? Okay po,
baka
sige
may
po.
Experience si Doc Mo dun sa field, kung dissimilar din po ba yung nag-transpire dun sa field, kung meron bang mga soil analysis din na ikanda. Maybe si Doc Mo could also
Usually po yung, thank you Doc Jess, Miss Ann. Usually yung mga nagre-request ng mga CSR, kalimitan po sa community organization, nagre-request sila ng mga yung mga corporate social responsibility, mga private, mga NGOs. Actually, ang we're not into plantation talaga, ang nursery, ang Calatagan Mangrove. Siya ay combination of conservation and ecotourism. Protection talaga, protection ang ano. Pero ang usual kasi na nai-advise din na talagang problem namin ay yung mga rhizophora ang naiitanim doon. At yung halimbawa 60,000 lang yung budget, kulang na kulang yon sa isang CSR lang na MOU yung or MOA. Hindi included doon yung mga physico-chemical consideration, yung soil analysis, which is I think very important consideration sa pag-venture ng mga ganitong rehabilitation. Kasi yung zonation nga, halimbawa, kung rhizophora ang itatanim mo sa isang area na tidally inundated, talagang prone siya sa mollusk infestation, barnacles, yung oyster, tapos ang mangyayari ay stunted yung growth. I imagine yung 10-year-old na tinanim na mangrove, 1 meter pa lang yung ano niya, yung height niya sa isang sandy. Kasi din ang isang aftermath kapag rhizophora ang itinanim mo sa areas na tidally inundated or sabihin natin nagkakaroon siya ng low tide din, nagiging maputik yung area. Prone siya sa sa muddy, magiging muddy yung area pag rhizophora. So yun po ang aking take doon sa about soil analysis.
Thank you so much po, Dr. Mao. Let me just read some of the questions po that was posted on our Facebook Live. So, from Sir Mars Picardal, ano-ano po ang mga categories of validation ng mga marine resources po natin within the areas of the said program?
Thank you, Miss Ann. Thank you, Sir Picardal, yeah, for that question. Nung nag-start ang community-based conservation, merong partner yung LGU.
Like ano pa yung mga system?
Ayan, nag-mute na sila. So bali ang LGU may partner sila, specifically Conservation International and other NGO, no. Yung Conservation International, sila yung nag-lead ng assessment, especially mangrove assessment, vegetation analysis, as well as yung yung ecological profiling. Halimbawa yung yung extent ng mangrove, ano yung mga nandoon na species, as well as yung mga associated na mga say molluscan species sa area. So merong partnership sa Conservation International na yun yung tumulong na mag-identify kung anong mga resources ang meron sa itatayong community managed na organization.
Okay. Thank you so much po. May follow-up question din po siya. So, how can we identify the survival rate of mangroves and paano po ito ginagawa?
As I have mentioned, ang Calatagan talaga hindi sa plantation, wala kasing nursery area. Wala kaming river na malapit na pwede maging source ng fresh water for other species, particularly landward, no. So ang mai-suggest ko, I can send the manual ng Zoological Society of London, yung manual on the rehabilitation, kasi they have this criteria. One is the height of the yung seedlings o yung sapling. And then kino-consider din yung mga nodes, yung distance ng nodes, yung number of leaves, specifically nandoon sa manual. Pero in our experience, wala pa kasi kaming ganitong kasi pag meron ng mga CSR, mga MOA, hindi kasama ang monitoring sa budget. So talagang problem 'yon. At kailangan kasi ng additional pa na finances kung sino magmo-monitor nitong. Basta lang, talagang problem namin, magtatanim lang and then magpipicture. So yun yung isang challenge.
Yes. Thank you po, Doc Mao. magre-read lang po ako ng another question here sa ating Zoom chat. So from, have we engaged indigenous communities in coastal resource management, or are we seeing po transient or settler communities as the main partner communities po sa community-based conservation?
Pwedeng pa ulit, Miss Anne? Pwedeng pa ulit ng question.
Ayun po. Again, I'll just repeat. Have we engaged indigenous communities in coastal resource management? So, sige, yun na lang po muna, sir.
So
Then
far, hindi ko alam sa ibang area, pero hindi ko alam sa ibang area ng Philippines kung meron ng ganito na mga involvement ng indigenous community. No? Ayun. Siguro
So,
meron.
yes,
Oo,
sir.
meron siguro.
So are we seeing po settler communities as the main partner communities po sa community-based conservation?
Sa palagi ko naman, we can involve them. No? Kasi itong sa Calatagan, residential talaga sila, mga residents na. And maganda kung if they have the familiarity of the area, no? May sense of ownership kasi pag sa conservation, no? Madali mo ding maka-harness yung participation talaga if they understand the role of the mangroves, for example.
Okay, thank you po, Doc Mau. Perhaps si Sir Jess, baka po may on-ground experience po kayo na-encountered po or na-engage po ang indigenous communities?
Seldom doon sa in some areas, seldom kasi yung indigenous communities usually nasa baba sila dati and then eventually umakyat doon sa pataas na, no? Ganun yung nadi-display sila. So very seldom yung indigenous communities, pero in some parts of the Philippines I think merong mga participations. So hindi lang ako familiar on the extent of indigenous communities kasi sa conflict, no? Yung mangroves natin, it needs to be protected na walang mga settlements, and kapag kaandun sila, what will happen to them. So for cases dun sa aking experiences din on the field, I heard stories na they are allowed to extract resources but with regulations. Pero up to the extent, so up to the magnitude of their kung meron, it depends on the how serious the LGU is in implementing the law.
Thank you so much po, Doc Jess, for that additional information. So may another question po tayo. May isa-suggest po ba kayo na magandang gawin sa pag-rehab ng area na madaming barnacles, kagaya po dito sa Pagbilao? Alam ko po na dapat i-consider ang area na pagtataniman, pero bungad po siya ng experimental forest na kapag hindi na rehab, maaaring maapektuhan ang EF in the future. Thanks po.
Sige, Miss Anne, ako muna sasagot. Ano kaya yung area ni Sir? Tidally inundated ba siya? Fringing yung area? Or kasi kung halimbawang yun ay talagang tidally inundated na hanggang neap tide lang, possibly hindi talaga applicable ang rhizophora, no? Lalong dadami ang barnacles. At the same time, siguro kailangan doon ng physical intervention na, no? Yung parang parang green-gray engineering na integration na ng engineering principle. Halimbawa, magtatayo ng mga breakwaters, no? Mga breakwaters para yung target na basta ang mahalaga naglo-low tide siya eh. Naglo-low tide yung area para hindi ma-wash out lagi. So I think parang meron. Siguro pwedeng i-share ko Miss yung sample ng physical intervention dito sa sa Zoom para makita ni Sir yung
Sige po.
sample ng this is taken from naka-share na po, Ma'am Ann?
Yes,
Ayan.
sir.
Parang ganito yung physical intervention, no? So pwede siyang mga bato, no, mga dike, parang dike siya eh. Pwede ang tawag sa kanya ay mga physical intervention, no. This is based on the Zoological Society din kasi research based naman itong ginawa nila. These are Avicennia seedlings, no, saplings. Pwedeng bamboo yung barrier. Ito may mga ganito. At ito, talagang kita nila yung growth kasi merong pinaka-barrier talaga siya, rocks, no. Bamboo. Pwede ring breakwater. Ayan, parang ganito siya. Kung fringing yung area, then gusto nilang taniman. So, kung sandy naman yung lugar, o kaya muddy, pwede din naman ang Soneratia o kaya yung Avicennia marina dyan sa area na yun. Ayun.
Okay. Thank you so much po, Doc Mau, for that. Perhaps ma-check din po yung or ma-share din po yung kung napakita niyo po kanina, sir, na manual. So we could share it to our participants. Ayan. So thank you so much daw po. That question was from Ma'am Maria. Okay, so sige po, maybe we could ask 2 more questions because we're nag-overtime na po tayo masyado. Sige po, last 2 questions na lang po siguro from Sir Ricardo. Is it okay to plant mangroves in areas where mangroves don't naturally occur, or is it considered habitat alteration?
Theoretically, no, and ideally, no, yung zonation kasi ang magandang consideration sa plantation eh. I do not know other silvicultural considerations or ano. Kasi kapag halimbawa ililipat natin yung ano niya, yung habitat sa ibang habitat, most likely baka yung growth niya ay hindi ganoon ka successful. So yun yung mga possible na implications sa growth niya.
Thank you so much po, Doc Mau. Maybe mayroon pong take po dun si Doc Jess. Pa-unmute po, sir.
Yung question is, pwede bang taniman yung tama ba? Tama po ba yung question na we could plant in areas na hindi naturally? Tama ba?
Yes, sir.
Nagets ko ba yung...
Is it
okay.
okay to plant mangroves in areas where mangroves don't naturally occur? Or is it considered habitat alteration?
Yeah, basically, kung meron na existing habitat, it will be an habitat replacement. No? Meron na existing. Well, it is, may mga gray areas din naman because we have seen areas na hindi siya naturally mangroves, kung hindi medyo ano lang, parang yung ecosystem is destroyed and they would want to rehabilitate it, and what they did was planting mangroves. Hindi ko lang mapakita yung pictures, but may mga communities din ganon. So they do it out of pure honesty naman na gusto nilang i-rehabilitate. So may mga areas naman din na ganon. The mangroves survive and eventually dumami yung mangroves in the area. So may mga nag-expand. So walang seagrass, naturally ano lang siya na sediments lang talaga siya openly. So when they planted it, eventually nag-thrive naman yung mangroves throughout the years. And may mga ilan na may mga substantially na nag-survive, no? So may mga communities din po na ganun yung ginawa, especially nung implementation ng NGP, may mga seedlings na available and the PNAP ng BFAR. So if we are going to consider na may existing na siya na habitat na hindi na po. Pero kung naturally parang barren siya na area doon sa coastal area that you'd want to rehabilitate, maybe. No, I'm not saying na tama pong gawin, na maybe. But to plant mangroves, kasi yun na yung mangroves is a barrier din from the wind doon sa mga bahay nila, ganun po yung parang naging motivation. No? So it's a barrier or a windbreaker kapag strong winds and typhoons, may mga mangroves na nag-survive, and it adds as a protection doon sa kanilang and mga storm surges, no, doon sa mga communities. So ganun yung parang naging motivation ng some communities why they have planted mangroves. So that is my take po doon sa question na iyan.
Thank you so much po, Doc Jess. Ayan, nag-raise hand po si Doc Mau.
Ayan, in addition siguro sa sinabi ni Doc Jess, no, wag lang siguro sa sa mismong Halimbawa kasi may mga areas na mangrove na merong seagrass, no? Wag lang mismo doon sa may seagrass na meadows, no? Seagrass beds kasi seagrass has different ecosystem services, no? It's a different ecosystem, no? Para hindi mag-away out, mag-agawan ng ecological role.
Yeah, thank you so much po doon, Doc Mau. Yes, indeed, kasi ibang ecosystem practice. No? Merong suitable ecosystem management
Yung
na
aking experience pala doon, to add a little bit, medyo a little delta na po siya, newly formed substrate. So parang delta doon sa labasan ng river, napo-form yung mga sediments. So they started planting.
thank you so much po, Doc Jess. Okay, so we'll ask last one question po because we're over time na po, no? So this is coming from Michelle. Is there any collaboration with other government agencies with regards to physico-chemical analysis of substrates to date?
Collaboration.
Yes, sir.
Naputol saglit sa akin, ano nga uli? Pakibasa po uli.
Is there any collaboration with other government agencies with regards to physico-chemical analysis of substrates? So, for instance po yung soil. Sa ngayon po, meron po ba?
I speak for our experiences here dito sa northeastern ng Mindanao. We don't have that strong collaborations pa with other agencies, no. So in our university, we are reaching out dun sa Sendro and other communities, and sa DNR we have a good relationship naman sa DNR dito, pero yung sa mga engagements ng soil analysis, walang ganun ka-detailed na mga engagement. So our engagement is more on technical expertise, yung sharing ng experiences, and they consult us if ever they would want to, no. So yun yung level ng engagements namin with DNR, and in my case here doon sa just last year we went to Siargao to look into one project sa DNR, and they asked us to assist them. So mga ganun yung experiences. But as to the level of mga soil characteristics analysis, I don't remember we have engagement in that kind of level.
Thank you so much po, Jess. May ma-add po kayo, Doc Mau?
Yeah. So far sa amin wala din kasi siguro kung halimbawang institutional research, no, they can actually the one who can do collaboration with say sa UPLB halimbawa sa soil science, no, pwedeng makipag-collaborate if there are experts doon sa kanilang gagawin. Kasi hindi naman talaga malaking area, hindi naman quadrat ang pagsasampling sa soil doon eh. That depends on the scope of course and the budget, no, siguro. So sa Calatagan wala pa. Actually personal expense yung ginawa ko na physico-chemical analysis ng soil sa Calatagan sa research.
Okay. Thank you so much for Doc Mau. I think may one last question na lang po tayo sa Zoom chat. So I'll address na lang din po itong question na to for Doc Mau. What is the main problem with marine conservation in the case of Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park in Batangas?
Yan. Thank you ulit, Ma'am Ann. Napakagandang question ito. Actually, yung financial sustainability talaga yung main problem. No? Kasi yung participation, madali mo namang ma-harness yung participation ng community. Very eager. No? Very motivated yung tao. O siguro dahil naunawaan nila yung role ng mangrove sa kanilang community. At palibasa isang area lang eh, yung barangay na kung saan nandoon yung mangrove. Talagang sila ay may teamwork. Napakaganda ng community participation. Very commendable yung participation ng community. Dahil talagang taga-roon din ako sa area na yon. Sila yung iba doon kamag-anak ko at siguro dahil na-inspire sila sa mga ginagawa ko, nakakatulong din. Nakakatulong. So yun po.
Thank you very much po, Doc Mau. And thank you so much po for answering the questions, Doc Mau, Doc Jess. And for those participants po na nag-send ng questions po nila, hindi ko na po natanong lahat, even po yung nasa Facebook live. So I hope ma-check din po ng ating speakers and ating discussant later on po para po ma-answer po yung mga questions and clarifications niyo po. But we'll proceed now po sa ating program. So let me just share my screen to, ayan. I hope kita nyo na po yung aking screen. Ayan. Okay, so let me just award this certificate of appreciation. So the University of the Philippines Open University EIDRB Smart Program presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dr. Mario A. Cudiamat for giving invaluable knowledge and expertise as resource speaker during the webinar topic entitled Towards Building Sustainable Community-Based Marine Conservation, the Case of Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park, Batangas, of the Revitalizing Socio-Ecological Production Landscape and Seascapes webinar series held on the 31 August 2022 via Zoom, given this 31st day of August 2022 at the Institute of Biological Sciences, University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Signed, Dr. Inocencio E. Buot Jr., Professor and Project Leader, and Dr. Joanne B. Serrano, Professor and Program Manager. Also like to present this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Jess Jumawan for giving invaluable insights and expertise as discussant during the webinar topic entitled Towards Building Sustainable Community-Based Marine Conservation, the Case of Calatagan Mangrove Forest Conservation Park, Batangas, of the Revitalizing Socio-Ecological Production Landscapes and Seascapes webinar series held and given this day of 31st day of August 2022 at the Institute of Biological Sciences, UP Los Baños. Signed, Dr. Inocencio E. Buot Jr. and Dr. Joanne B. Serrano. Okay, so thank you very much po. Again, it is such an honor to have you with us, Dr. Jess and Dr. Mao. And for our announcements, we all invite you to our next webinar on September next month. And ngayon, speaker na po natin ang ating discussant. So Dr. Jess Jumawan will be with us to present the preliminary findings in the biophysical assessment of Satumi's seascape and the flora and fauna, sorry, hindi ko po na-edit yung title, here in our site in Butuan. So Dr. Jess is actually part of our program, of the EIDRB Smart Program. He is actually our field supervisor sa Caraga State University po. And for those interested participants to know yung mga ginagawa po namin here sa program namin sa Philippine Satoyama and the EIDRB Smart Program, join us again next month and hear yung mga preliminary findings po from Doc Jess Humawan. Okay, and a certificate of completion will be awarded po to those who will be able to participate the webinars from the first episode up to our last episode. That is all for our announcements. So may I request everyone for the photo opportunity to open up their cameras po. Okay. I'll just stop po yung focus mode. Ayan. We are 99 strong participants po here on Zoom, and we also have 11 viewers po sa ating Facebook Live. So, ayan. So, I can see all your beautiful and handsome faces. Sige po, open na po ang ating camera. And I will start na po taking photos. Okay, slide 1. Smile! Okay, we have 5 slides po pala. So, keep smiling lang po kasi hindi niyo po alam kung saan slide po kayo. Okay, slide 2. 1, 2, 3, smile. Slide number 3. 1, 2, 3, smile. Slide number 4. Smile. And for the last slide po, smile. Okay, thank you so much po. So the evaluation link is already sent na po sa ating Zoom chat box. And later on, I will send it as well sa ating Facebook Live. Dalawa lang po kasi ang aking kamay. So, please bear with me po. And for those who are interested to join po sa ating next, also send the evaluation, I mean the registration form po sa ating chat box. Again, reminder lang po sa ating mag-fill out ng evaluation form. Please make sure that your email address is valid and correct, as well as your name, kasi automated po ang ating certificate. And also, reminder lang po that we will close the evaluation form after 6 hours. So, after this event that concluded, so 6 hours lang po ang ating palugit po para po sa ating registration, sa ating evaluation form. Okay, so thank you so much everyone for participating. Thank you so much Doc Mao and Doc Jess for your time and for sharing po yung information and what is happening on the ground sa ating mangrove rehabilitation and mangrove conservation. Again, I invite everyone po to join on our next event and our next topic. So thank you so much and God bless everyone po.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Mau. And thank you, everyone.
Okay. Kapay sunod, Sir Jun. Pati
Oh.
si Mau.
Kami muna ni Mau bukas. Anong oras ka mapupunta?
Baka sa umaga po, Doc Jun.
Ha?
Baka sa
Hapon?
umaga po.
Sa umaga. Nandun
Apo.
din si Ann. Sige,
sige
tayong
po.
tatlo mag-coffee.
Basta lang
Nasa
po.
campus lang ako ngayon, Sir Jun. Ano na.
Sa susunod, ha?
Sige, Sir Jun. Yes po.
Bye-bye po,
Thank you,
Doc
Ann.
Jun, Doc
Thank you.
Jess.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc Mau.
Thank you.
Jess.
Doc Jun. Bye-bye po. Bye-bye.
Oo,
Hello po
sige.
Sir Jeko. Thank you po for joining. I hope you could join po next month.
Thank you, Ann, ha?
Yes, sir.
It was great. Ang dami, ano?